Hello, Intermediate Orchestra. This is our second video lesson that we've had over what is now the start of summer vacation. I wanted to catch you up on some updates that have happened over the last week. As of April 1st, which was not an April Fool's joke, there is no more school for the rest of the year. So unfortunately, we're not going to be having our concert as we had planned. So what we're going to be doing instead of focusing on our orchestral music like Airplane, Royal Processional, or Beyond the Thunder is we're going to switch over to playing more solo pieces. So those are going to be found in our All for Strings books. I'm also going to upload some onto the website, as well as the yellow pages in the back of the All for Strings book. We're actually going to look at one of those in this lesson, is those yellow pages in the back. Those are a lot of fun. Orchestral pieces like Royal Processional are really fun, but unfortunately you need an orchestra to play them. So it's not going to be as fun if you're just sitting in your room playing the viola part all by yourself. So that's why we're going to make this switch over to the solo pieces. And one final note is we are still going to be having advanced auditions. Those are going to take place at the start of next school year in August. And Dr. Bussey will have the music for you available in May. So until then, we're going to be working really hard. Hopefully, if you're working hard, you should actually be a better player than if we were having regular orchestra classes, because the type of music we're going to be working on is a little bit harder, because you should be able to go faster when you're working on your own, so long as you're working every day just a little bit at a time. Also, in addition to playing our solo pieces and working on individual technique for your instrument, we're going to be learning some fun songs. I know Eric and Valia have already suggested a couple pieces. I'm going to have the PDFs uploaded for you this week so that you can start practicing them on your own. I won't do a video lesson for those just yet. I'll do that based on whatever techniques we need to learn, if there's anything new in those pieces. Otherwise, you'll have the music, you can practice them. If you want to upload them, I'll have an assignment ready for you that it won't have a due date, so it'll always be up. And if you want to, you can take a video of yourself playing. I don't need to see you and your family in your house. I only need to see for a video your instrument and your hand and your bow, so that I can make sure that we're doing good technique while we're playing. Finally, I'm going to be introducing some more advanced techniques. We'll talk about tuning, changing strings, vibrato, shifting, and extra scale work that you can use to play songs by ear. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But for this week, this lesson will be pretty simple, but I'm going to be assigning you more and more and more work in your All for Strings that you can look at on your own. And hopefully I'm going to push to see how much we can do in a week, and then we'll bring it back from there and make sure that we're learning things really well and doing a good job with the music that we do have. So with that said, we're going to get into our lesson in All for Strings. Okay, now that we have our All for Strings book ready, we're going to go to page 13 and look at number 39. This is another one we looked at in class before we left school, but I would like you to practice it because it's really, really good for your bow technique. It's all about your right hand, making sure that our bow on the string has the right levels. In fact, there are 7 string levels. That's why the song is called 7 string levels. What it's covering is the fact that even though you have 4 strings, there's a combination of playing your 4 individual strings plus the 3 combinations of double strings. So for violins, your G and D, your D and A, your A and E, and then for cellos and violas, that would add the C string and combine with G. Now, what we're looking at in this one, 7 string levels, you can see those 7 string levels in a diagram on page 20. If you look at it, it's kind of a bunch of lines and arrows crossing every way. It looks a little bit confusing. So the more simple way to look at it will just be to take your instrument, go into playing position, look down the strings, and place your bow starting on your lowest string, and then just count 1. And then when you cross it over to touching 2 strings, that's 2. And then just your second string, and then your second and third string, your third string, and your third and fourth string. So having all of those, and just your 4th string at the end there. So that'll be your 7 levels of string crossings. Why this is important to practice is because it might look really easy. Oh, I just take my hand and I can kind of like go across all 4 strings like that. It's not that simple, because when you're at the frog, your angles change very easily. But as you move your bow out towards the tip, it takes a lot more for your arm. You can see how high and low my arm is going just to change strings. So what we want to practice is being able to play cleanly and intentionally on 1 or 2 strings at a time. So for number 39, I'm going to skip the first measure. Cellos and violas, make sure you play the first measure. You're going to start on your open C and G combined. You'll play open C and then G. And then I'm going to come in on measure 2. So this is going to be where the violins start, and it's measure 2 for the violas and the cellos. Make sure that you start on G at the very frog. We're going to use the whole bow having a good tone. In order to have good tone, make sure that you're adding arm weight as you get to the tip. Keep the weight and then release a little bit as you get to the frog so it doesn't crunch. So here we go. This is 7 strings, number 39, starting with half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, of course, the cellos and violas, you'll finish with your open C string at the end. 2 things you're looking for in this one. Make sure you really pay attention to these. Make sure that you're using the full bow, going from frog to tip, and that as you're getting out towards the tip, remember we have mountains and valleys with our wrist. That as you're doing your down bow, your wrist is pushing out to keep your bow straight, and it's coming up. It's making a mountain. You can bring your wrist to your nose as you do your up bow. Also, the second thing is make sure that when you're doing these single strings and double stops, if you're playing a single string and you accidentally catch another string, if you're trying to play only D and you hear A a little bit, go back. Don't keep going. Go back to open D and just play open D until you can get the whole bow length without touching any other strings. The same is true when you do your double stops. If you do D and A together, and you notice that you're hearing one string way more than another, so you might be doing D and A and you're only hearing D, and A is really soft, start on that string and start leaning the bow down until you make contact with the second string. If you have the opposite problem, if you're hearing A and not really D, start on D first. Set your bow on D string and then lean it over to A, and you're pulling through both of those strings there. The last thing that you'll notice is pressure is really, really important here. Even though you're playing on 2 strings, it doesn't mean you need to play twice as hard. I used to think that when I was young, is that I thought, okay, well, if I put this much pressure on 1 string, when I play 2, I need to put double, but that's actually just going to make it crunch. You're doing the exact same thing as you would on 1 string, but the angle's different. That's what allows you to play on 2 strings. So do this exercise more than once. You're not doing it just, because Mr. Bird said I have to do this exercise. You're doing it because it's teaching your arm where all of those bow angles are. Final thing I'll say on this one is it's critical, since now you're teaching your arm at which angles it needs to be to play cleanly on a string. Make sure that you double check your 3 points. Instrument on your shoulder, and then your thumb, and then your index finger. Because what you'll notice is this sets my bow arm at a certain height and certain angle in order to play it correctly. And that's what I'm going to be practicing. If I practice it that way one day and then the next day I'm a little bit lazy and it kind of swings over here, my arm has just, all 7 positions have changed. My arm is in a different place, and it's not, you're actually doing negative practice. The more you practice incorrectly, the harder it's going to be to actually play it right. So every time, make sure that you have your instrument up, check your 3 points, get your bow at the very frog, and then begin. This applies for your scale. This applies for your 7 string levels. Now we're going to, after you practice 39 a few times, I would play it maybe 4 times, do the repeat 2 times. We're going to skip over to number 41. Number 41 is called interval study. We've played this one in class also. It's only double stops. So you're only playing on the G and the D string. And what we're mainly focusing on this one is doing tunnels so that we have clean double stops. And then also we're learning about intervals. A quick review on what an interval is an interval is the distance between 2 notes. So if you take your instrument up and you start with open D and you go to your first finger, E, that's what we call a second, because we've traveled 2 notes. We went from D to E. So if you were to skip E and go to F sharp, skip E and place F sharp, that's what we call a third, because we played D, E, F sharp. 1, 2, 3, that's a third. Same is true for going from D to G, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 notes. You might think, well, D, E, F, G, that's only 2 notes in between. But we count the note that we're looking at and the note that we're going to. So that's why it's a fourth, D to G. And then you can go to your open strings, D to A, D, E, F, G, A, that's a fifth. And so on. You can keep going. You can go D to B, D, E, F, G, A, B, that's a sixth. And then seventh would be D to C sharp, D, E, F, G, A, B, C sharp. And then lastly would be what we call an octave, which is when you go from one note to the same note name, but it's up higher or lower. So if you went from D to D, that'd be D, E, F, G, A, B, C sharp, D, and that'd be your third finger on the A string. We're going to have that's just a quick introduction to intervals. What we're going to have scheduled for next week is on musictheory.net. There will be another challenge of intervals. Last time we did note identification. This week we're going to have a note interval challenge, which will just be, it'll show you 2 notes and you have to say, oh, D to E, that's a second. D, E, second, 1, 2, and then so on. So you do that as quickly as you can with 100% accuracy, hopefully. So looking at interval study, we're going to play our double stops. If you need to still practice 39, pause the video, go back, play that one a few times. Now we're doing just the G and the D string. So you might want to warm up with slow bows on G and D. Just make sure you can get really good sound playing both of those. Then we go to section A, and we're walking up on the D string, a mini scale, D, E, F sharp, G, while including the G string. So we start those together, start at the very frog on G and D. This is number 41. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you get good sound on that, go to section B, and we do the exact same thing, but we're doing tunnels now, walking up on G, G, A, B, C, and it's the same thing. If you look at the very bottom, right underneath interval study, number 41, you'll see there's these little dashes, little lines. On those, you can write each interval. I'll give you for the first couple answers, and then you can fill in the rest and ask me questions on Google Classroom if you have trouble getting them. But the very first 2 notes are G and D. So we need to know, what interval is that? Well, let's count. G, A, B, C, D. Okay, that's a fifth. So you write a 5 right underneath those 2 notes. Then you go to the next ones. G to E. G, A, B, C, D, E. That's 6. That's a 6. So you'll put a 6 underneath. And you continue going like that. If you look at section B, it does the same thing. It's G to D. We know that's a fifth. The next 2 notes are A to D. So you start on A and count up. A, B, C, D. That's a fourth. So you put 4 underneath and continue going through all of the intervals in that one. So the main, if I was going to summarize number 39 and number 41, we're mainly focusing on bow control, having good angles, good tone all the way from frog to tip. And then also we're introducing in number 41, we want good intonation in your left hand. The really cool thing about playing double stops is you're playing 2 notes at a time, but it also means you need to have 2 notes in tune. So luckily we're only doing an open string while we add our fingers. But if my first finger's out of tune, it makes both of them sound bad. So it's really important that they both are in tune. Speaking of tuning, I've talked in the comments about how to tune your instrument, and Dr. Bussey shared a video on how to tune, but I'm going to upload a separate video just showing you how to not only tune, but change, if you need to change your strings, if you break a string, or if like somebody had a string that unraveled, it got really loose. So I'll show you in a video how to tighten those up and be really careful, but also do a good job with it. So that's 39 and 41. Practice those. They're not super exciting, but they're extremely important and really helpful for your tone, having a good sound. Have fun. All right, now that you've played your double stops in number 30, 39 and number 41. We're going to move over way to the back of the book where the pages first turn yellow. It should be page 40. And these are all solo pieces. Now, I have really fun memories with these solo pieces because these were the first times when I was in 5th and 6th grade that I was able to play songs without the help of my teacher, because we didn't actually learn these songs together as an orchestra because they were solo parts. He just said, hey, if you want to learn them on your own. So I got to read them and learn them for the first time, and they were a lot of fun. We're going to start with the first one, which is called The Ash Grove. It's a pretty simple tune. You may have heard it before, and there's not really any new techniques. It does have some form that we have to look at because it has a DC Al fine, but we've talked about those before, so we'll look at the form first. But we're going to start with the Ash Grove, and as we go throughout the weeks, we're going to look at all of them. Hunter's Chorus, Minuet, they're really fun, and hopefully there'll be pieces that you could play for your family at home. You could give them a mini concert, and that would be a lot of fun. Now, looking at Ash Grove, we see, first of all, that we're in G major. We have one sharp, F sharp. So that means that if we're ever on the A string, it's going to be low 2. And whenever we're on the D string, it's going to be high 2. So high 2 on the D string for F sharp, low 2 on the A string for C natural. We also see our time signature. These are the first two things we should always look for. Key signature, time signature. Our time signature is 3-4. So we're counting in 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But we have a pickup note. So that means we're not just going to start 1, 2, 3. We're going to start on an up bow. So don't be way out at the tip. It's just a quarter note. You're going to start in the middle of your bow on open D. And then it starts. So if you're counting off in your head, count to 2. Because you'll go 1, 2, 3. And that third beat is your pickup note. 1, 2, 3. That's the first part of our initial phrase there. It's only 4 measures, and it has a couple things. It's got some slurs. Any of your eighth notes are slurred, so it's going to be very smooth. This means that every note is a quarter note in length. So even if you have 2 eighth notes, they're slurred together, and all of your quarter notes are obviously quarter notes. One thing that has to do with level 3 that we talk about of music, our tone, is going to be our dynamics. We start mezzo forte in the very beginning here, and then you'll notice there's a crescendo and then a diminuendo in that 4th measure. So when you start, you're going to start not too loud, probably a little softer than usual. And then here, you're going to get louder. And then where you see the diminuendo, get softer. And then you'll notice, if you look throughout the piece, that happens in every phrase. You have getting louder, getting softer, getting louder, getting softer. So I would go ahead and practice that first line, and we can read the notes together like we did in the last video. I'll do that too. But one look at the structure, if we zoom out and we look at the piece, it's actually pretty simple because it does that first line, it does it 3 times in the piece. We start D, G, B, D, C, B, G, G, A, C, B, A, G, F, D, D, G, B, A, G, F, E, C, E, D, G, F, G. That's our first sentence. And then at measure 9, where you see the 9 with the circle, it does the exact same thing again. And it doesn't change until you get to 17, where you see the 17 with the circle. That's what we call part B. So at the very beginning, we start with part A. It does part A again. And then at 17, that's part B, because it's different. And then you'll see at the very end, it says DC al fine. DC means da capo. Capo means head. So it means you go to the beginning of the piece, the top of the piece. So you go back to part A, and then you end where it says fine or fine in your books there right before measure 9. So you start at measure 1, you play it all the way through, both lines, and then I don't actually know how many lines it is in your piece because I'm seeing all 4 lines here, but you go through the whole piece, and then you go back to the first line, and that's where it ends, where it says fine. So what I'll do now is I'm going to play all the way through part A. So this is measures 1 through 8, and then I'm going to skip over to measure 17 because that's part B. And then you'll have all of the parts, and you just need to play A twice, and then B, and then you finish with A again. So here is part A. So set your bow in the middle, on the D string, and then you're going to count to 2 before you come in. 1, 2. When you have those slurs on the 8th notes and it does that little scale going down, low 2, the hardest part is this part, going from A to G. You want to, if you're doing open A, make sure that you're not getting any ugly sounds in your string crossing, so really slow it down. And just play those 4 notes. C, B, A, G. And do that over and over and over again until you can do it every time perfect, and then you can include it back into doing the whole first line. Lastly, do those dynamics. Start small, grow bigger where you see the crescendo, and then get back down where you see the diminuendo. So that's the first part, that's part A. Then we're going to go over to part B, which is measure 17. Remember, because we're using pickups, you don't actually start where it says 17 with the circle. It's right before that. You'll see a slur BC. B to C natural. And you might also notice there's something missing here. Those dynamics, the crescendos and diminuendos. The reason those aren't in this section is because the whole thing is forte. This whole section is just as loud as you can play it. So you can start, maybe you'll be at the tip when you're starting BC. This is the pickup to 17. So you set your first finger on the A string and you're going to slur B to C natural, 1 to low 2. And you could count yourself in, 1, 2. And then you go back to the very beginning. Now, a couple notes. One is for the cellos, you are shifting. So you're going to start on B to C, that's 1 to low 2. And then you shift here with your second finger to second position. And you use your 4th finger to get all the way up there to E. Now, you might notice, especially the violas, because you don't have an E string, we have to go up to our 4th finger. Violins, you have an open E, but don't use it in this one. Instead of using open E, when you do that upscale, see, you'll squeak going over to the E string. So make sure you use your 4th finger. 3, 4. And that's about it for that section. You want to be forte, nice and loud. Oh, one last thing. When you get to the second to last measure, at the very, very end there, it goes F sharp, D, C sharp. Make sure that you play that C sharp. Everything else was a C natural in the piece. This is the first time where we have a C sharp. And the reason for that is because it's part of an A major chord, which we haven't talked about chords, but it's really fun what's going on there with the music. But you have a C sharp, high 2. So make sure that you get all your low 2s on the A string except for that one there at the very end. You circle it, circle the sharp. Maybe if you have a highlighter, you can highlight it. Just remember high 2 there. And that's Ashgrove. It's really simple. It's got slurs. You want to have a good smooth sound, but just take it one line at a time. Don't rush through it. It's only 2 sections. It's line A and it's part B. Part A, part B. And if you take it one section at a time, you'll learn it probably within the week. And you'll be able to have a small concert for your parents. That'll be fun. So that's the Ashgrove practice.